Why Creatures of Sonaria is mid. Now, before we get started, I just want to say that this is my opinion and my opinion only. Your opinion can be different from mine, and that's fine. Hey, maybe I'm wrong and you're right, but this is just what I feel about the game after playing it for almost 2 years. Also, I just want to say that there are way more positives to this game than negatives, and these are just a few possible reasons as to why some may consider the game mid. And of course, no disrespect to the devs who work long and hard for the game's weekly updates. Now, let's get started. Reason 1. Not enough to do. Think about it. What do you usually do when you play Creatures of Sonaria? Is it eating? Drinking? Talking to friends? KOSing? Maybe it's grinding for that new gacha with the insane requirements.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't.
Or simply trying to get better creatures. There isn't really that much to do in the game. Survival itself is pretty easy, especially since both meat and plants spawn, and now we have photovores and photocarnies, which make surviving even more easy. So, surviving isn't much of a challenge in the game, unless you come by a KOSer. So KOSing is a big part of the game, and it's a big part of pretty much every survival game. It stands for kill on sight, and it's basically when people just attack you for no reason. And most of the time it's annoying, but sometimes it can be fun, especially when you get into a fight with the KOSers. The problem is, the PvP in Creatures of Sonaria isn't the best, at least in my experience. Sure, there are countless unique abilities and plushies that can aid you in a fight, but most of the time, this is what a fight in Creatures of Sonaria looks like. Yeah, it's just running and biting each other's tails when whoever with the higher stats wins the fight. After nearly 2 years of playing Creatures of Sonaria, I feel like the game is a little boring at times. Again, this is just my opinion, and if you think the game is very fun, you don't have to agree. Even at peak times though, where there's special events, the game just doesn't feel like there's enough content in it. Most of the time it feels like there's just new ways to grind for new creatures. Here are 3 things that every game should have: fun gameplay, interesting story, and challenges with great rewards. Now, Creatures of Sonaria has some of the most unique creatures and seemingly takes place in a whole different world. Perhaps a different planet or a different dimension, and yet there's nothing on the background of what's going on. It's wasted potential, but this is understandable since it's a Roblox game, and not many Roblox games have original stories. The gameplay is where the problems come from. There isn't much to do with the game besides killing other players, which could be fun if the PvP mechanic was a little less janky. Many survival games have decent PvP mechanics that really reflect the skill of the player. Creatures of Sonaria does this to some degree, but higher tier creatures are almost guaranteed to kill lower tier creatures, and tier 1 to 3s are pretty much useless in wars because they'll just get instantly killed by the higher tier creatures. As for challenge, there's plenty of challenge in Creatures of Sonaria, and maybe even a little too much, which brings us to our next reason. Reason 2. Too much challenge, not enough reward. Lately, Creatures of Sonaria has become very challenging. Not the actual gameplay part of it, but the grinding to get better creatures. And I'm sure we can all agree on this after seeing the Traveler's Gacha. Oh hell no! So, everything you do in Creatures of Sonaria comes down to pretty much one thing: get the best creatures, which is a grueling task that knows no limits. In most games, you simply have to save enough of a certain currency to buy a character or creature you want. However, in Creatures of Sonaria, you can't do that. Well, at least you can't buy the species that way, unless the creature you want happens to be in the rotation store. Most of the time, you need to spin on gachas to acquire the creature you want. The issue is, there's a very small % chance you'll get the creature you're missing. You can spend your mushrooms and still not acquire the creature. And this is just the beginning. Some gachas have special requirements that'll take you ages to meet, like the recently released Traveler's Gacha. And some creatures even require thousands of Robux, but these are more understandable since they're made to support the developers. The toughest gachas require time, like literally time. You need to play the game for 250 hours for one creature. 250 hours, that's 10 whole days of playtime, just for the Hellion Warden. Judging by the fact that you can only grind a maximum of 3,600 mushrooms per day, assuming you grind 24 hours, like no no stopping in between. Gachas are just not a really good way to get the creatures you want. So where do you turn to? Trading. Trading is a big part of Creatures of Sonaria. The value of each creature usually comes from how hard it is to get the creature, or just like really rare ones like the Karuku, which you can only get when the game was in its beta stage. To a new player, trading is not easy. They wouldn't have many mushrooms to trade with, nor good creatures either. Their only chance is to grind like hell in the game until they can get enough for a good creature to trade with. And grinding is not easy, even for events, which are supposed to be fun and for everyone. In the most recent event, the Christmas 2022 event, a new limited currency was implemented, so players couldn't even prepare for the event. You can't simply just save your mushrooms and buy the limited creatures. You had to grind from scratch by collecting gifts around the map, which only give around 1 to 5. If you got lucky, you could find the blue gifts, which have a chance to give you 20 if you got the question right. And if you got really lucky, you could find a fallen star, which gives about 150 gifts, which may sound like a lot, but then you realize that the cheapest Christmas creature from around 2 years ago would cost you 2,500. Bruh. The grind is unbelievable, and I'm amazed at how many people are able to get rich in trading, and all that for what? So you can flex how rich you are? Or just chill in the oasis with the coolest color palette? When there's a really tough challenge, there's a reward that's equal. But in Creatures of Sonaria, not so much. You grind so you can get the rarest creatures so you can just show off? Reason 3. Unimportant updates. So one thing Creatures of Sonaria does better than pretty much every Roblox game is its consistent updates. Every week, Creatures of Sonaria gets updated. But for what? A new creature? In 9 out of 10 updates, the new creature is the big headliner, the most exciting part of the update, and sometimes it could even be a rare creature, which makes it even better. Sure, there are other things added in each update, but from what I've seen, most people care about the creatures the most. The thing is, we may be nearing a point where there are just too many creatures in the game. With already over 200 creatures, adding one every week will extend the roster to no end. And besides, do we really even need more creatures? The map has had a few edits and additions over the years, but it's remained pretty much the same since I started playing, which was early 2021. The map is also kind of small despite the expansions, and you can pretty much fly from one end to the other in less than 5 minutes pretty easily. Even like a new map that you can manually choose to join would be a big plus compared to adding like another creature to the game every week. Creatures of Sonaria is probably one of the most complete games there is, and that's both a good and bad thing. Being complete means that there's not much the game is missing, and that most of the mechanics are finished or they don't need to be changed. And the game has felt that way ever since I started playing in early 2021. So compared to a lot of other games, Creatures of Sonaria is already done, and it's done pretty well. So let's just take Dinosaur Simulator as an example. Dinosaur Simulator has been around for what, like 7 years now? And the game is still incomplete. Bruh. We don't even have all the icons for the dinosaurs. But Creatures of Sonaria may have finished too quickly. The fact that it's felt complete since 2021 means that there just isn't much groundbreaking updates that can be added to the game, because the game is essentially already done. There haven't been many new mechanics added, and it feels like the game will just continue to crank out new creatures for eternity, and that's all there is to it. And maybe that's enough for some players. A new creature every week is still infinitely better than no updates at all. But to me, it just feels like the game needs a little more than a new creature. There was one big game-changing update planned, a supposed recoding of the game, which would possibly solve all these problems, but unfortunately it was cancelled. And that is an update that could potentially bring Creatures of Sonaria back into the game that it once was, or perhaps just even better. These are just my top reasons for why the game may be considered mid, and personally, I don't enjoy the game as much as I used to. But this doesn't mean the game is bad by any means. Creatures of Sonaria is one of, if not the most well-made survival game. Every creature is unique, even the names. Well, especially the names. How do you even pronounce that? A big team of developers ensures the game will receive constant updates, and even if it is a new creature every week, it's still better than nothing. The game is also big on creativity, giving players the ability to basically customize any part of their creature, including the material it's made of if you're willing to shell out, say, 100 or 2 Robux. There are plenty of positives, but I can imagine the game may be getting a little old for some players, including myself. Remember, at the end of the day, your opinion matters the most. So comment below if you agree, disagree, or have your own viewpoints. But if you really enjoy playing Creatures of Sonaria, you can ignore what I said and continue having fun. Creatures of Sonaria may not be the best creature survival game on Roblox, but it's certainly one of the biggest, if not the biggest. And there's a good reason why so many people play the game. And maybe someone like me is just in the minority with my opinion. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.